today's episode of The Unwritten Rule, we are, of course, going to recap the football game that happened on Saturday between Missouri and Texas A&M. Pretty grim show. We are pretty low down on the Tigers, as I'm sure all of you are. We tried our best to recap it, talked about pretty much everything, obviously all the stuff that went wrong in the actual game that caused Mizzou to lose, but then just talked about some stuff, in a broader context in terms of where this team is at and where we've kind of realized this team is at. And it's not a good place heading into the rest of the season. So it was a good conversation for sure. So feel free to tack on or put your, thoughts in the comments, and we will mourn with you after a absolutely brutal loss, the worst we could have probably envisioned heading into this game. So yeah, really, really bad scenes from Mizzou, but we had a good recap about it. So listen along. Like I said, drop comments. We'll definitely interact, and we'll all be in this together as Mizzou tries to rebound in some form or fashion on this season. So talked for about 45 minutes, just got into everything with the A&M game and what it's going to mean for the rest of the year. So definitely a good show to enjoy. And then we tried to have some fun on Quick Hits, talked some college football, a whole bunch of it. Obviously, it was craziness in week 6. So we, of course, just kind of delved into everything with Bama losing, Tennessee losing, all that stuff. We talked some college football to end the show in Quick Hits. So yeah, dive in and let's lock in, Mizzou fans, because it's going to be a interesting rest of the season. It's probably the best I can put it. Without further ado, the Unwritten Rule starts right now.
Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Payton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Monday, October 7th. And boy, oh boy, where to start? Mizzou loses 41-10 to Texas A&M. And this is going to be an overreaction show, or it's going to sound like an overreaction show, and I don't really think it should, because we knew this team, Payton talked about it a whole bunch, could potentially book its place in the college football playoff on Saturday with a win against the Aggies. I didn't think they could throw their whole season away, which is what it felt like watching this game. Mizzou loses 41-10. They were lucky to even get to double digits. They hit a garbage time field goal. Payton, Kenny, I'm not going to intro for too long and surmise. You guys were both there. You felt it and saw it happen in real time, felt the emotion kind of get taken out of the game pretty fast. I mean, my God, the worst nightmare scenario you could have envisioned coming into this game happened on Saturday, and pretty embarrassing stuff from the Tigers.
I mean, I guess really we should have seen it coming with just the garbage that Mizzou was doing leading up to this game. The whole, I know it's probably not what he meant, but the "it's louder at practice" comment was stupid. Drinkwitz for no real reason saying we're preparing for Marcel Reed. That was stupid. There was nothing to be gained from that. The blanket thing, which A&M is heavily implying was Mizzou doing it to themselves, trying to just, fire their own guys up. Who knows? A lot of crap leading up to it, and I'll tell you what, Mizzou is going to have to eat even more of it for the next couple of weeks, because I went into this game like it really did feel like a coin flip, because A&M is a good team, no doubt about it, but Missouri is supposed to be good too. They have all the talent in the world. And I truly did. I saw a world where Mizzou lost this game by even double-digit points. Like, I really did see a world where they just came out flat. They pick it up a little too late, and they lose this game by 10 points. To lose by 31, and it really was only 31 because A&M really took their foot off the gas in the third quarter. They were taking. It felt like they were taking penalties to just kill more clock. I hate to really say it, but barring a miraculous win over Alabama, I think Missouri's season is over. I mean, I really don't see any way you can get pantsed quite like this, and with the schedule Mizzou has, be able to make up the ground. I mean, they were punished heavily by the AP poll, and the AP poll isn't what decides the playoff, but the college football playoff committee is not going to like what they've seen from Missouri either. I mean, and the problems in this game, I mean, there's too many to even really count. There wasn't one thing, not one person played well in this game, I don't think. I would not give a grade above a D to anybody. I didn't think anybody played well. There was absolutely nobody. It looked like nobody gave a damn on the sideline. Like, quite frankly, that was really concerning. I mean, people had their built-in excuse early with the PI that wasn't called, the Luther Burden thing getting wiped out, which I was at the game live, so I wasn't watching Armand Membu. I've heard everyone say it was the correct call, though, so I believe it. When you have something like a 2-point, or a 2-point conversion, a penalty like go against you, though, you don't have to respond the way Mizzou did. Like, it was just completely flat, lifeless. I would, quite frankly, I'm concerned about just about everyone on this roster right now, because didn't really look like anyone had any good body language in response. Caleb Flagg tried for a drive to get his guys fired back up, and nobody was giving him the time of day, so he gave up. I hated the way the coaches didn't really get after anyone. I hated the way Drinkwitz managed this game. It all was bad, and I think Missouri's season is probably over.
I think, in my opinion, this team lost its identity. It thrived last season on being the underdog, making themselves feel like the underdog, even in scenarios where they were a 10-2 team. One of the better ones in the SEC, had quality wins throughout the season, albeit some of those were close games. Kansas State, Florida, and maybe you could even say like this team kind of tricked you from last season. I don't necessarily believe the roster got better this past offseason. We had a strong defensive end and leader in Darius Robinson, and that kind of plays into maybe that leadership really isn't there this season, that guys aren't being held accountable. You don't really have like these, I think psycho could maybe be taken the wrong way, but guys that'll just, have a screw loose that go and hit someone as hard as they can, like Ennis Rakestraw would have. It's just one of those things where you just don't have those guys anymore. It didn't seem like someone has really stepped up in these first 5 games, these first 6 weeks, that you can lean on in those scenarios. And they just have strayed away from it. Comments in the press conferences, and they've learned from that over the last couple of years to just be careful about what you're saying, because even though when it comes off the wrong way and you might not mean it that way, you just have to know what you're saying before you go into these press conferences. And then the blanket thing as well, as Payton mentioned, no matter who did it, why do it in the first place? If the whole mantra is something to prove and you feel like you've been disrespected, no matter how high this team has been ranked this season, they've thrived off of that. And it just feels like that's just been pushed out the window through these first 6 weeks.
Yeah. The antics from Drinkwitz, they've never been great. Sometimes they've been funny. And, like last year, there was the whole stand on business thing with Josh Heupel that he did. And that was because of his team. And like you said, because of the leaders on that team that you talked about, Kenny. And yeah, it's gone. And when you don't win and it doesn't come off, you just look like a jackass. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, I get that we'll probably never know, but the fact that the blanket thing is it's being even suggested by like Mike Elko and people that Mizzou did that too. So that's freaking embarrassing, man. Like it's unbelievable. I don't know why why are you bothering to do that? Like you're giving the other team purposeful bulletin board material. I mean, it's not a way a serious SEC team should take it. I get that there was problems on the field too, and this can be overcome by just winning the football game. We're going to get into it, but yeah, I just think you're right. The identity is lost. I was just scrolling through, Gabe DeArmond's Twitter, and he quote tweeted a guy saying this is the 2022 K-State game all over again, where that the wheels fell off and you knew it, you saw it happen in real time. And it's just, I have no confidence that this team will rebound, because you're right. They're missing a Darius Robinson. They're missing an Ennis Rakestraw, Javon Foster, a Cody Schrader. I mean, there's no spine anymore. And I'm a little mad at, I guess, ourselves. We all picked Mizzou, or I guess, Kenny, you picked A&M, but like me and Payton picked Mizzou to win this game. And we did say we could see them losing, but yeah, it almost felt like the warning signs were once again there, but you thought maybe the talent was enough to overcome it. I'll segue from there. We can actually talk about, how they lost. Payton mentioned the early penalties and just the bad responses. I absolutely hated, and I know this wasn't the biggest problem of the game, I hated the way someone like Luther Burden, who should be a leader on this team at this point, he responded terribly to that touchdown getting called back, and the game just went off the rails from there. I mean, Payton, you mentioned there was ample things. No player maybe deserved above a D. What's the first thing your mind goes to when you talk about just what went wrong in Mizzou looking just completely inferior to a team not even ranked in the top 15? And credit to A&M. They're a good team. But, yeah, where does your first kind of mind go to?
Really the defense as a whole. I mean, I think, by the way, we can probably talk about it a little later, but I think both of you nailed it with your analysis, Kenny, especially like they almost feel like a team that bought into their own hype. And it just feels like that whole something to prove mantra has just completely left them. I couldn't agree with you two more on that. But the defense, I mean, again, for whatever reason, Drinkwitz thought he was Sherlock Holmes for saying to the media, yeah, we're preparing for Marcel Reed. That's semantics that they're listing Wegman as the starter. Not only did Wegman actually play and start, he flat out eviscerated this defense. It was absolutely a joke. I mean, how many just back shoulder fades he threw that were on the money, how many jump balls he threw that Missouri didn't come down with. I mean, you see the numbers if you're watching on the YouTube. He had no touchdowns, but 18 for 22 with 276 yards. I mean, he flat out worked Missouri. I mean, this A&M receiver core is not very good this year. There's no Evan Stewart. They have a couple fun players. They have Moose Muhammad. They have Terry Bussey. But there's no superstar. And they won every single 50-50 ball. Every single one of them was won by an A&M receiver. The corner play was a flat out embarrassment. Toriano Pride and Drayden Norwood were horrible. Deloach got a ton of playing time because I think Mizzou was just over. I believe him and Pride had the exact same amount of snaps yesterday. And they were both terrible. There's just no way around it. They were really, really bad. And quite frankly, that wasn't even the worst part of the defense. There was absolutely zero pass rush all day. Nobody was any good. There wasn't one good edge rusher in this game. Johnny Walker has turned into the invisible man. I have not heard his name called in 3 weeks on any sort of play. He has been non-existent. Zion Young, I guess, made a couple plays. Eddie Kelly was just a ghost. The D tackles got pushed around all day. I remember one of the things I was concerned about was, can they maybe stop Le'Veon Moss? Because I was a little concerned about missed tackles, I think is what I said, on such a big back. Well, Marvin Burks on his own probably missed about 4 tackles, like just straight up horrible missed tackles. I mean, he was in a game where nobody was good. Marvin Burks found a way to stand out by how bad he played. He was terrible. There was just no pride taken by anyone on that defense. There was just no push all day. Like I said, they were pushed off the ball. That first touch, it wasn't even just Le'Veon Moss, Kenny. If you can go back to the stat sheet, they had their second running back, Amari Daniels. He had 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. I mean, Le'Veon Moss stole the show. I mean, he averaged 11.5 yards a carry and they had 3 touchdowns. And I mean, that's how he kind of put the real dagger in Mizzou. I mean, first play out of half, Mizzou responds by giving up that long touchdown run. It was just a joke all day. I gave Corey Batoon a lot of flowers early in the season because I thought he was doing a relatively good job, and people kind of weren't super concerned about the pass rush because they were like, oh, maybe it's by design that we're just keeping him in the pocket. I think now we can say that probably wasn't the entire case because there was just absolutely nothing all day. They rolled over very quickly. They did not they did not force a punt until A&M's last drive of the first half, and that's because A&M gave up and ran the ball 3 times at midfield to just kill the clock. It was an F- performance from the defense, quite frankly. I thought nobody played well.
One thing I just want to throw in there about that offense as well, and this was something we talked about when, not debating, but looking at these two quarterbacks with Connor Wigman, we're like, he probably doesn't have too much of the running threat when you compare him to Marcel Reed and what he does in both capacities. But he had a 15-yard run, 11-yard run, and a 9-yard run. He just kind of broke out a couple of those times, and it was just like one of those things, just backbreaking plays that you stopped him from passing the ball, and he just scrambles on you and picks up those big yards. The one thing that really stood out to me, though, on the offensive side of the ball is that one thing that we like to say is try to establish that run. There was just, we talk about the offense just not doing anything. The running game just wasn't there either. The offensive line play was pretty poor. We can look at the offensive line grades here on PFF, and there really just wasn't much there for any of the run blocking grades. Everything was pretty much mid. Cameron Johnson had the highest one at 68.3. Everyone else was 62.5 or less. And it's just that defensive line. We talked about it. Nick Gordon, who transferred from Purdue, and just some of those other contributors, they stopped everything. This offense just really had nothing going.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing to tie those two things together. And Kenny, I want to talk more about the offensive line because I think, to me, that was maybe one of the most surprising things because that feels like a line we've given a lot of praise to. I want to go back to Payton's point for a second, though, because, again, we've talked about Drinkwitz and his saying it's semantics. I mean, it's one thing to say that you're going to face one type of a quarterback and then the other one plays. From what you watched, Kenny and Payton, you could add to whatever he says. Did it look like they prepared it all for Connor Weigman? Because it was you mentioned those 3 explosive runs. The 2 of them were in the first half. I can't even imagine what Marcel Reed would have done to this defense. I mean, they made Connor Weigman look like a natural dual threat quarterback at the beginning of that game. So if you were really preparing for Marcel Reed, I don't know what you were doing. And then clearly it looked like they were only preparing for Marcel Reed. Would you guys say the same based on just what you saw from how comfortable Weigman was all game?
This takes me to the post-game press conference, and
Yeah.
this was the one that really stood out to me the most. The one question and one answer, because Drinkwitz, of course, was not in a good mood. A lot of his answers just didn't really come off that strong. He just really didn't have the time of day. I think this was probably one of the shortest press conferences I've seen from a head coach. It was something in the 5-minute range, which is not a lot that you see, not something you see, especially after a game, no matter the outcome. But the question was, they don't always name the player, but one of the TV reporters there asked him something along the lines of, was it a surprise they came out with a different quarterback? Did you prepare for this quarterback? And before he could even finish his question, Drinkwitz kind of jumped the gun and just started answering. It was just very complimentary of Connor Wigman. He had nothing to say about if there was preparation for both quarterbacks. Semantics, whatever you want to say, him kind of making fun because Marcel Reed's sister was on staff, and then they had that post on Twitter. It's just like felt like there was no preparation for both quarterbacks going into this game because they were just kind of set on Marcel Reed, thinking they kind of outsmarted Texas A&M.
I would probably agree with you, Ken. I'm sure they looked at Connor Wegman tape and stuff, but it sure looked like they were expecting Marcel Reed out there. Because they just had no answer. I mean, Wegman was absolutely incredible. I mean, he looked Mizzou looked like it did not belong on the field against him. I mean, it was really, really, they did nothing. They didn't bring any pressure, it felt like, to speed him up. It just looked like nobody was prepared for anything on the field. And I don't really know. I can't really speak to the offensive game plan and whether I think it's any good or not, because quite frankly, Brady Cook is still just not where he needs to be right now. And the O-line was just really not good. A&M's D-line ate them alive for the most part, which is really concerning considering how good this unit was a year ago. It was just the team as a whole didn't look prepared for much of anything. I mean, it really, I really don't even know what to really, I can't say like what I think might have happened because it was just top to bottom terrible. Nobody played well. And that does go back to coaching. And I wish instead of posing for photos with Marcel Reed's sister and talking about how it's going to be louder at practice than at Kyle Field, we were kind of tuning out everything that was going on social media and maybe brought some sort of plan to Kyle Field to play a top 25 team. I mean, it was just over so quickly. Like, it was genuinely like, I've just never seen, like, that was worse than either of the Tennessee games, because at least in those Tennessee games, you can fall back on, well, in 2021, Missouri just didn't have the dogs, and it was a new DC and a new scheme. Everything was just bad that year. Like, they weren't a good team. In 2022, that game was a 28-24 game in the third quarter. And Heupel and co just pulled away because they were that much better that year. That's not an excuse this year. This is supposed to be a team that's loaded top to bottom with like just players that are expecting to compete for a playoff spot. And they just got flattened. I really think this was on par, if not worse, than either of those Tennessee games. I don't know if I'd say it's worse than the K-State game. That K-State game was truly something in 2022, but I would say this was easily the first or second worst game in the Drinkwitz era.
Yeah, I hate to, continue to overreact, but to what Drinkwitz said, but the more I think about it, and then after seeing what happened, like, the more it just makes me angry. I mean, it's just embarrassing. Like, this is your leader. This is a guy who, knew the stakes of this game, or at least acted like he knew the stakes of this game, and then goes out and that's what he shows, after saying all that BS, in the build up to it. I mean, it's just like, what kind of program are we running here if you want to be a top 10 upper tier SEC team? I mean, these kinds of things just can't happen. It's a serious problem to me. I don't know. I just don't think. I think if we as fans are trying to hold this team to a higher standard, like, I don't know. I kind of can't stand for that. It seems ridiculous to me that, you're saying all that stuff about a quarterback not preparing for both, whatever the case may be. Back to Kenny, your point about the offensive line and Payton. I'll let you start with this, and then Kenny, you feel free to add whatever if you have any other thoughts on run or pass blocking or anything, because you already talked about the pressure. But Payton, I'll give you your praise. I asked you kind of on the spot, name me one player area on the offensive line, that you're maybe the most worried about, and you mentioned Marcus Bryant. Marcus Bryant didn't actually end up getting a run block grade, got a 60 pass block grade, and had 3 penalties. We also identified, of course, Nick Scorton, who you guys already talked about, 3 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 2.5 for loss. I mean, what an unbelievable no-show from a unit that, like you guys have both already said, we had been heaping praise on, rightfully so. They had kind of earned it in the buildup, and just, we knew this game would be won and lost in the trenches, and it was completely pissed away on both sides of the ball, but particularly on the O-line with just, the pressure and with the way Texas A&M was able to get to the quarterback and shut down the running game, like Kenny said.
Yeah, I mean, again, the strength of that Texas A&M team is their D-line. I mean, it's not even just Scorton, although I think he's the highlight. I mean, you got Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart. It's a really, really good unit. And that was definitely like one of the focal points, I thought, for Mizzou was going to have to be winning the trenches on both sides of the ball. Not 100% of the time, but more often than you don't. And no, I mean, yeah, Marcus Bryant, who's been kind of up and down, was way down on Saturday. I mean, I'm not going to blame just him. Nobody played well. Armand Membu wasn't good either. Connor Tollison wasn't good. Cameron Johnson wasn't good. And Caden Green was not good. The whole unit was bad. But, I mean, you get 3 penalties on your own. I was he the one? I couldn't hear it. Was he the one that got flagged for the ineligible downfield on the Luther touchdown?
Armand Membu.
It was Armand? Okay, well, either way, it was just another step backwards. I mean, every single problem we've brought up or concern that we flagged in the preseason for Mizzou reared its ugly head and then some on Saturday. And that includes really the offensive line just kind of having two new guys and not gelling well. They've looked completely mystified. And Mike Elko, a lot of credit has to go to A&M and Mike Elko. Mike Elko is a hell of a defensive coach. Those are some dogs on that defensive line. A&M, again, is a good team. They are not supposed to go out and beat Mizzou by 31 points, though. And really, should have been more than that. So, yeah, a lot of credit has to go to A&M in that regard because, I mean, they were playing. It was just, you looked at the sidelines and the way these players were acting after they made plays. It was just two completely different things. I mean, A&M came out and was fired up from the opening kick. I mean, they looked so inspired. A lot of that, I know, because Scorton said it after the game, was because Brady Cook put his foot in his mouth and said Kyle Field is going to be quieter than the practice speakers. And Scorton said that was a big deal to them after the game. And I think a couple other people said it as well. Just a bad thing to say that gave them bulletin board material. And Mike Elko, as good coaches do, 100% took every single piece of bulletin board material he could and got his guys to completely buy in and fire up. And it showed on Saturday.
Yeah. The only thing I probably have to add to this is there was just like no moment where they lit a fire under each other. And I just think, kind of moving forward, does this loss, light a fire under them this week? How are they going to put this behind them? One thing that I would credit Drinkwitz for, and I've seen this the last couple of seasons, especially during that 2022 season, is that after a pretty bad loss on a Saturday, he comes in to that Tuesday press conference like nothing happened. And I think that sometimes can be a good thing. And the mindset of putting that behind you, the whole mantra and kind of where this team wants to be is, take a week by week. And he said this even in his post-game press conference, is they look to be 1-0 each week. They're not trying to look ahead at their opponents. They only care about UMass this week, even with Auburn and Alabama and Mississippi State approaching. It's all about who is this week. And I think that's something that if they kind of, take that step forward, one of the things that they said is like, you're either going to dwell in this or you're going to put it behind you and let it fuel you for what's next. And that was something Christian Williams mentioned and Theo Weiss mentioned. And if they can do that, then I think they could probably turn the season around and go back to close to where they want to be. But it's all about, lighting a fire under themselves after one of the worst performances in the past couple seasons.
That's a good segue to what I'll ask, and then we can probably wrap up as we try to put this game behind us. That all sounds great, Kenny. I don't know how much confidence I have in this team doing that. I really don't. When it goes back to what we said at the top, there does not appear to be an identity. I have zero trust that Drinkwitz can get this team, at least this year, fired up for games, especially on the road. So I'll ask you guys this. How many games is this team winning the rest of the season? Because I'm not sure it gets over 8. That's where I'm at.
Well, they're very lucky they have a paper thin schedule. Because I don't see a way obviously they're going to beat UMass. They could have lost this game by 100 and they'd go out and beat UMass. UMass is a joke. And I'm really mad that I have to watch them play UMass at UMass after this. I don't think they'll lose to Auburn. I think Payton Thorne is just not good. And I really think them coming to Mizzou is going to help. They're going to lose to Alabama. I don't really see. Drinkwitz has shown he has no idea how to prep guys for road games. I mean, they've gone out and won a couple nice ones. That South Carolina game in 2022 was I think it's one of the better wins under Drinkwitz. I really think that was impressive when you consider everything. Kentucky last year, they fought back. But I mean, Bryant Denny, and we'll talk about what Alabama did what Alabama did on Saturday, but they're not going to lose to Missouri at home. Let's be honest. Oklahoma, they're not a super good team, but certainly I can't say I think Missouri's going to absolutely dog walk them now. South Carolina, again, another team that's kind of up and down, but at South Carolina. Drinkwitz has done well against them in his career, but the law of averages always catches up with you. Eventually, you're probably going to drop one. Arkansas, I still don't really think that much of. I know what they did against Tennessee, but whatever. I mean, it's still not the best team in the world. Mississippi State's a team they should beat. So I'll still put the number at 9, at least, that they win, just because the team is really talented. Mizzou is a very, very talented team still. But I agree with you, Knowlton. I don't see any sort of identity right now. I don't know what their thing is. Like, even in 2022, it was like, all right, we're getting embarrassed. Like, we just got embarrassed by K-State. We just lost this heartbreaking way against Auburn, but we have a good defense. We're going to go out and try and at least make a bowl game. Last year, we all know, something to prove. That team bought in, and they became something like very special. I don't see what this team is supposed to be this year, other than a bunch of guys that like think they're really, really good and have seemed to have bought into their own hype. And like Kenny and you, like Knowlton, Kenny has also alluded to this. I don't really trust the team leaders right now. Like, this team sorely misses a Darius Robinson, like a guy that just wore his pride for the university on his sleeve and knew how to keep guys leveled. Yeah,
on his back,
on his jersey. They don't have a guy that's a little bit of a psycho and will go out and like not stand for this type of performance like Ennis Rakestraw. I mean, they don't have that fiery guy like Chris Abrams Drain. Like they don't have a Tyron Hopper even. I mean, there's just pieces missing. And I don't know, like that was really something that just stood out to me. Like, because I was at a certain point, you stop watching what's on the game, you kind of watch the sideline. Nobody was getting on anyone. Nobody was getting in people's face and trying to hold anyone accountable. Drinkwitz was just kind of wandering around the sideline, not really doing much. The coaches weren't getting in guys' faces. I mean, Toriano Pride got mossed by a guy, and a coach pats him on the helmet as he comes off his field. Like, what are we doing? Hold people accountable, for fuck's sake. It's just that element is completely missing from this year's team. And I don't think a performance like this would have ever been allowed to snowball or been allowed to carry on the way it did with the leaders last year's team had. And I don't think they have those this year.
And sometimes those leaders don't even have to be the most vocal guys on the field, like Darius Robinson, or have the best character. A guy like Chad Bailey was one of the quietest people that I've ever encountered in college football. And he grabbed Ennis Rakestraw's face mask and cussed him out. Like, there's guys like that. I mean, maybe not the best thing you wanted to see in a bowl game, just where that team was. But there were guys, these past couple of years that just wouldn't let things stand on the team. They wouldn't let their teammates get away with certain things. That's not there right now. And, I think you're going to maybe see the true identity of this team during that Auburn game. How do they respond against UMass? They're going to win that game, of course. But how are they going to go into that next week against Auburn at home? It's homecoming. Last time he played Auburn, some of those guys remember that game. Some of those guys were on this team. Different circumstances this year. But I think that's when you're going to see the true path where this team is going to take moving forward, is into that Auburn game and then after it. And I think you're in that 8 to 9 range at the moment for wins. I would just probably lean 8 to be safe, but I think that's a good range looking towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm down. I think we've seen it already. I don't even know if I need to see it against Auburn. I think Payton's right. I think if Auburn hasn't even, if you could put Diego Pavia in Auburn, I think they'd come in and beat Mizzou. And that team's got talent. Their quarterback just doesn't know how to do anything. But I'm down. I think this team showed who it is. And I think it's done. I think it's 8 wins. I think it's you kiss the playoff goodbye. But I had a bad sports weekend, so maybe I'm just in a generally sour mood. But you two can weigh in as much as you'd like on this. I don't want to over.
Is there a duck in here?
What was that?
It's getting a phone call.
Kenny's got the duck. You know what, Kenny? That was good. I needed to hear that. Right now. You two can weigh in on the site. I talked about it on the top of the show, but just we're on leaders. The things I've been seeing on Twitter about the wasting Luther Burden stuff, I'm sick of it. I don't like like obviously this team is bad. There are problems. Brady Cook is struggling to get Luther Burden the ball. That to me doesn't excuse sulking and getting all pissy on the sidelines after you have a play called for a penalty. Luther Burden is the best player on this team. You're going to be held to a different standard and look up to, whether you like it or not. You have to be an example, and I don't believe that warrants you to have excuses made for you just because you're going to be a first round NFL draft pick. And frankly, NFL scouts will notice that. They notice that body language. They notice what you do. We don't need to get into a whole spiel about it. Feel free to add anything if you guys have any thoughts on that, but I've just saw that talked about. And to me, if you want to find your identity, you can't be making excuses for players just because they're the most talented ones in terms of how they'll do in the NFL. That doesn't excuse you from, acting poorly, in my opinion, reacting poorly to when stuff goes wrong. It's only going to hurt you. That's my take.
Luther Burden is without a doubt the most important recruit Mizzou has gotten in the last decade for sure, maybe ever. When you really think about how he made it quote unquote cool to go to Missouri again. Like his impact cannot be overstated the last few years. And no doubt about it, the most talented player Missouri has had in well over a decade as well, I'd say. I'm not saying he needs to be the guy that is going to get in people's face and like be the one that has to fire them up, because, that there are star players that aren't like that. There's, you heard, to just draw an example, Eli Manning early in his career. I mean, Tiki Barber used to say Eli Manning was a horrible leader. I mean, he was the quarterback of the New York Giants, and he was not the leader that of that team. That, like, you don't have to have your star cornerstone franchise players be the big outspoken leader. But I do agree, you can't have your body language really. I'm glad. I like that Luther Burden gets frustrated, like with himself, like with the team at times. But you have to channel that in a positive way. It can't be you sulking, taking your helmet off, and kind of just being down on the sideline. It has to be something positive. I don't want to get too on Luther Burden. I disagree with the notion that he's been wasted at Mizzou. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. He's almost certainly a slam dunk first-round pick. And Missouri won a New Year's Six with him. Like, there are first-round picks who have accomplished far less than Luther Burden has. So I don't really agree with that. Again, I don't need Luther Burden to go out there and be the guy giving pregame speeches. He doesn't have to be that. But I do agree, he's got to have better body language. He can't be sulking around and all that, because when guys see the star player do that, they're going to get dejected. And that is just kind of a cascading effect. And I'm not blaming Luther Burden for what happened yesterday. I think it was just a collective failure from everyone. But I do agree with that his body language needs to be a bit better. But he doesn't have to be the big leader at the same time.
Yeah. I think, Kenny, you got anything?
Can I pivot to some positives?
Sure. Well, I'll just say quick too. Like I also, in mentioning that, am not trying to dunk on Luther Burden or
Me neither.
Luther Burden at all. I just, from some of the discourse I've seen, which he warrants because he's an incredibly talented guy. That's just what I noticed. But yeah, Payton, I think you're spot on. I'm not saying he needs to hold a players only meeting and be the guy that's going rah-rah and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, you are held to a different standard as someone who has the spotlight on him. And, I think if Mizzou as a program wants to elevate itself, particularly this season when it's struggling for an identity, you can't make excuses. Obviously, the team's probably not. But even as a fan base, you can't make excuses for a guy just because he's the best player on the team. I mean, everyone's held to the same standard. They're all on the team, trying to contribute. But again, Luther Burden is handling it like he is, and Payton makes a good point. It's good that he gets frustrated in moments like that because he cares. It shows he cares. So, and we'll see. It's just an overall frustrating day. All right, Kenny, that's my Luther Burden spiel. Pivot to some.
Actually, yeah, it's something I just kind of reminded me of too. Is we talked about Drinkwitz, maybe just walking around the sidelines, not really getting in the face of some of these guys, getting them going. I thought we saw something pretty good in those first 4 weeks when he got in the face of Luther Burden after a lot of those penalties and some of those shots in the foot, stepping on their own tail early on, and you thought that maybe it would kind of spin into something a little bit more positive in these next couple of weeks and continue that. And I think you just didn't see it.
Yeah, not at all. Good point. Yeah, pivot
Okay.
away. 6 A&M. Oh, I just looked at that again. Sorry.
This is what I want to do. 2 positives, if I may.
Yep.
Marquise Johnson, who entered this game as questionable with an ankle injury, ended up getting back on some of those kick returns. 3 of them. He didn't start off as one of the kick returners to start the game, but he did have a 63-yard return in the fourth quarter, which was probably a good thing to see. No matter who was on special teams for Texas A&M, if a lot of their younger guys were getting in the field, that's still kind of good to see for his own health. So I like that. Blake Craig made a field goal, albeit it was from 23 yards out, but that is still kind of a good sign after a rough week 4.
Yeah, if there's
What's the other positive?
Just those 2. I said 2.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you said more.
If there's one thing I love doing, it's hyping up, true freshmen. I've done it with Blake Craig. I've done it with Kawan Lacey. I did it with Marquise Johnson last year. All 3 of those guys will be back. So,
Blake Craig's not a true freshman.
But I did it. Okay, sorry. Freshman, first year appearers, whatever you want to call it.
He appeared last year.
Did he?
Yeah, he was on kickoffs because
yeah, Harrison Mevis wasn't getting them deep enough.
That's
another thing. Like, until you said Marquise Johnson right now, like, I forgot he was on the team, to be honest with you, because he's been a complete non-factor on the offense. I mean, that's another problem. And again, a lot of this is because Brady Cook has just been flat out bad this year. But I mean, guys you were expecting to take leaps like Marquise Johnson, maybe Brett Norfleet, they've been complete non-factors. In fact, Brett Norfleet, when you look, I know he's playing hurt probably. His blocking has been horrible this year. I mean, he has just been a mess. It is just everything is pretty terrible right now, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous because it can tailspin your future too. Because those are guys that obviously their roles are only going to get bigger. So, yeah, sorry, Kenny, we turned your positives into negatives. There's just nothing good about this game.
It's nothing really to be super excited about here.
Mizzou will play UMass next week, 11 a.m. on ESPN2 in Amherst. If they don't shut that team out and score at least 55 points, I think I'll be in the same mood I was. Kenny, would you like to read the score predictions and I guess you can take a victory lap on this one. Credit to you.
Can I take the win?
Yeah, you picked.
Yeah,
A&M,
you won.
You
did win.
Yeah.
You were the closest.
I don't know if we would just want to give a win this week. But Jack, you had 28-24. Payton, you had 31-24. And I had 27-24 Texas A&M.
Payton, Texas A&M had the amount of points we thought they'd score in the game by, I think, the midway point of the second quarter.
Yeah, they had it by halftime for me.
Yeah. Well, we had the same amount, so.
Oh, man. I mean, Jesus, what a disaster, really. I mean, what else can you really say? I mean, the season is almost certainly over, and it's week 6. That's a bummer.
Yeah. Tell us how you're feeling in the comments, Mizzou fans. We'll love to lament with you, to be honest.
Yeah, no, we will. I will 100% revel in the misery with you.
Yeah, we have to share this together, this experience of being Mizzou fans. And hey, at least it can't get any worse on the basketball court, in theory, which will.
No, I really don't think it can. Like, like it really, I guess in the literal sense it can, but I mean, losing to Jackson State and going 0-for in conference play is genuinely as low as it gets.
I'll end it with a Gabe tweet. I think he said this was as bad as the White Sox season. Like, it's looked as awful as that, and they were historically bad. Yep. So there you have it. All right. That's all we've got. We tried to recap, obviously, as much as we could. There's a lot, you can talk about with this game, but put your thoughts in the comments. Seriously, we will, we'll respond and lament with you, but it's a struggle, but we march on. We're going to put a positive spin the rest of the show, though. Well, kind of. We'll still talk a little Mizzou, but we'll have some college football talk. Kenny's going to entertain us with a quiz, so we will finish this show with quick hits. Okay, quick hits time. We will try and put a positive spin on the rest of the show, as Kenny attempted to do before we shut him down. But Kenny, here's another chance because you have Ken Sports Shorts. It's our Monday show. What quiz do you have for us today, good sir?
Someone brought this up to me not too long ago, within the past couple of weeks, talking about presidents that have thrown out the first pitch at Major League Baseball games, and this was a fun question that popped up, and so I thought it'd be a good one to spin on you guys. But the presidential ceremonial pitches have been a tradition in Major League Baseball since opening day of the 1910 season. Who was the first president to throw out a ceremonial first pitch?
Jimmy Carter?
In 1910.
Oh, I'm just kidding. He's stuck in my brain because I heard something that was the first president born in like an actual hospital
Good lord, that's crazy.
100 years ago. So 1910 was the first one.
Yes, and then there will be a second question to spin off this.
So we just have to figure out who was the president in 1910, Payton.
Well, the World War I president was Woodrow Wilson. So it would have been around then. But I mean, it was probably a little before him, so it's like after that would have been Harding, Coolidge.
When was Taft?
Hoover. Oh, I think it might have been Taft. It was like Taft, McKinley, Theodore range. I don't know if Taft would have been the one to throw it.
I'm going Taft. Is it Taft?
Yep, you're right, Jack.
Okay.
Boom.
Here is the follow-up question. Since 1910, every president except this president has thrown out at least one ceremonial first pitch. I'm not counting Joe Biden and Donald Trump because they've both thrown out ceremonial first pitches at Major League Baseball games, but not as presidents.
Oh, that's
interesting.
kind of
Okay.
an interesting twist to that. I was going to say I don't remember the Don ever doing it as a
He
president.
threw out a first pitch at Fenway once, and Joe Biden threw out a first pitch at an Orioles game.
Okay, so whoever hasn't done it. No way the Bushes never did. They seem like
There's a
baseball
very
guys.
famous one after
The most
World War-
famous one is
after
George
9/11.
W. Bush doing it.
Well, yeah, I
would assume Obama did it. I can't think of when he would have done it, but I think Obama did it. Bill Clinton probably did it multiple times.
Reagan's definitely done it.
Reagan did it.
Like,
I don't know. I'm feeling like a Gerald Ford.
no,
almost.
I feel like Gerald Ford. He played like football. I think he probably would have done
Gerald Ford. Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a general. You think he had time for that?
that. Yeah. Nixon was kind of a nerd.
Yeah.
Nixon has done it.
Oh.
That's even part of this trivia question I found. It said even Richard Nixon has thrown out a first
Oh wow.
pitch.
Okay. So sorry, Richard Nixon. I guess I'm not though, because he also stole stuff. But
Truman, I feel like probably did it.
All right, you guys got lock in a president now. I don't run too long on this.
FDR feels mean to say that one.
Ouch.
I don't think I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna go Gerald Ford. I feel like I can't picture Gerald Ford doing
I'll
it.
do Truman because I can't really think of any other. No, I'll do Reagan. Actually. I'll do Reagan.
No, he's definitely done it.
Jack, you mentioned this president earlier, but since 1910, every president except Jimmy Carter has thrown out. at
Oh,
least
no!
one German-
Wow, Jimmy Carter didn't
He
throw
still has
out a
time.
first pitch.
He could do it. He could do it still. If it's one of the days where he's awake.
He's not a president at the moment, so I don't know if
that's
it would
true.
count.
I just think isn't it crazy he's still alive? He's so old.
It was his birthday this past week.
He doesn't wake up on days. I don't know. He's just alive. Nice. I enjoyed that quiz. That was a good quiz. Ugh, all right.
That was a fun
We got
one.
Tigers in the Wild. Back to Kenny with this one. Who's your Tiger in the Wild?
Yeah, shout out True Son Cole Banker for this video before the Texas Tech and Arizona game on Saturday. Former Missouri AD Desiree Reed Francois welcomes the Wildcats to their first ever Big 12 home game. She's fist bumping every player, giving them a pat on the back as they walk in. This is just my question. Do you guys miss DRF?
They won a Cotton Bowl under DRF.
Yeah, I guess I do. I mean, Laird
In the
hasn't really had to
tournament game.
do.
Laird hasn't done anything to make me dislike him.
I miss Jackson.
I don't really miss Jackson.
I was having a conversation with a kid who was in a group chat and then heckled Jackson Francois when he was at Mizzou. So, like, not the kid wasn't at Mizzou, but when Jackson was on the bench, he was
Right.
he heckled Jackson Francois. Yeah, I guess I missed Durf. I don't know. I mean,
Too early to tell, I'd
hired
say.
Dennis. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did some good things here for sure. So I'll say yes for now.
Yeah, we answered that question awesomely. All right, Peyton, what's your Tiger in the Wild?
My Tiger in the Wild is going to be Ennis Rakestraw, who was very clearly watching the A&M game because at 1:47 p.m., which probably would have been close to the end of the game, just tweeted two facepalm emojis. I think it's pretty clear what that was about. Yeah, Dennis, I miss you. That's kind of what it is.
Did you call him
Why do
Dennis?
you look so weirded out?
I thought I heard you call him Dennis.
Yeah, I think you
No,
said Dennis too.
Dennis.
I think you said Dennis.
Did I
I
say
think you called him
Dennis?
Dennis.
I don't
Dennis
know.
Rakestraw. It's Dennis Gates. He's locked. Peyton's all in on basketball. That's what that's a sign of. That's what that's a sign of. My Tiger in the Wild is going to be my Tiger in the Wild probably for a few more segments. It's Kobe Brown. That's right. The NBA is back. At least it's back in preseason. Kobe Brown played his first game with the LA Clippers in preseason. 11 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 steals in his debut or season 2 debut. I think the travesty of this is that he has to wear the new Clippers like uniforms and all that stuff, which stink, but he does get to play in their cool new Intuit Dome stadium. Have you guys seen like what that's all about? Like you saw the drone tour of it and stuff. Crazy place. But yeah, Kobe Brown, nice, almost near double in the first preseason game for the Clip Show. I'm very excited. Clip Show, yo. Yeah, this stadium is nuts.
Yeah, and the Clippers logo looks really cool too.
Every chair is a massage chair. That feels a little excessive to me. Do you really need a massage chair? You're in the NBA.
Yeah, how expensive was this place?
Well, it's Ballmer. He's got all of it.
I know, it's just absurd to think about, you know.
I'm not sure. 2 billion. It says 2 billion.
2 billion, man. 2 billion smackaroos.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know. I'm excited for the NBA. I think Kobe Brown actually like might have a role. I think the Clippers have some issues in the front court, so I think he might actually play a good bit.
Fingers crossed.
Headlines. You knew we were going to talk college football. You knew we were, because Mizzou is amidst the chaos of week 6. You know, like a week, Kenny, sorry, I'm primering your headline. A week where, you know, it was like there's only one ranked game. Mizzou's in it. It was supposed to be the week you could take off, setting up for next week. And then it was just utter chaos, which, Kenny, you have a headline about that.
Yeah. I mean, Peyton, you might have been wrong about Arkansas this year, because our Razorbacks upset Tennessee, their first win versus a top 5 team since 2007. Took down the goalpost, didn't take it with them. Like we'll get to these Vanderbilt students in a second. But Arkansas won 19-14 against number 4 Tennessee, knocking them down a couple pegs in the AP poll. Yeah, shout out Sam Pittman, fighting for his job. Good for him.
Yeah, keep him. Yeah, keep him for good. I mean, wow. I mean, how can you fire a guy when he gets their first top 5 win since 2007? Clearly, Arkansas is headed in the right direction, right? I mean, then we got to call it what it is. But yeah, okay, I see the Tennessee guy there. Yeah, it's just kind of funny to see how much Tennessee got crowned after hanging 70 on a MAC school. Nico was not good in this game. I feel like people don't want to admit it, and we'll get to it in a sec as well. I don't feel like Tennessee was punished enough for losing this game, but is what it is.
I still think Nico's really good. I'm still bought in.
Not saying he's bad. I'm saying this was like a game against a decent enough SEC team, and he was not very good.
Didn't Arkansas, they won this with a backup quarterback, right? Didn't Taylon Green get hurt?
No, it was Taylon. Did he?
I didn't watch the end. He got hurt in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, I thought.
Oh, wow. Sure I didn't watch the end of this. So
I don't know how to feel about this, because obviously upsets are fun, but it's Arkansas. Yeah, Singleton.
You gotta let them get one every once in a while. Malachi Singleton.
I think he's a freshman. So yeah, big win. There was a lot of upsets in college football, which I guess Peyton, you can translate to your transition that to your headline.
My headline: Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, a top AP top 25 after stunners. 5 teams in the top 11 lost yesterday. The Tigers, Tennessee, number 4, Tennessee lost. Michigan, number 10, and USC, number 11, all lost. And, of course, number 1, Alabama going down to Vanderbilt, which we'll get into again more in a second. But very chaotic week. And, I mean, the AP poll reflects as much. I mean, Texas and Ohio State, I think, are the cleared number 1 and 2. Oregon is kind of just the, like, well, I guess, number 3. Penn State is the even more, well, I guess, number 4. And I mean, after that, I mean, you get Georgia right away. Miami has not looked good the last couple of weeks, but they're still hanging on. They're unbeaten. They're number 6. Alabama fell to 7. Tennessee only fell 4 spots. And Missouri, of course, that tumbled all the way down to 21. And I'm not going to debate that. A&M rose all the way up to 15, by the way, for those that are curious. I'm not going to say Missouri did not deserve to fall that far. They absolutely did. But I don't know how Tennessee loses to unranked Arkansas and drops 4 spots, and Missouri loses to a ranked team and falls 12. Yes, I know Missouri lost by a lot more, and Missouri, again, like I'm saying, they deserve to fall a lot more. Tennessee still being top 10, I know how chaotic it was. I just, like, can we really confidently say they're better than Ole Miss right now? Can we confidently say they're better than Clemson? I think I'd have both those teams in front of Tennessee right now.
Kenny, you got an AP? You got any AP poll takes?
Rank the Razorbacks.
They're 4-1.
They were like 8th out or something like that.
They are 4-1, and their only losses to a ranked Oklahoma State.
4-2.
They're 4-2. Oh, okay.
Texas A&M.
I forgot about the A&M. Yep. A&M. Never mind. Yeah, this was weird. I mean, dude, Miami too. I did the classic laying in bed watching. I literally watched the end of the third quarter of Miami Cal and went to bed. I thought Cal was gonna put the game away, and then I woke up and saw Miami was 6-0. And then there was the phantom. I don't know if you guys saw it, the roughing the passer or the targeting that they just wiped off the board on Cal that would have won them the game. But 2 games in a row now for Miami. Are they rigging it for a good ACC team? Some are asking the question.
Miami also had an illegal man downfield on the final touchdown.
They
had an offensive lineman in the end zone.
Yeah, but we don't notice that because we're ACC refs and we need a good number 3 seed. Also, is the top Big 12 team Iowa State right now? Am I reading that right?
Yep, and then right behind them is BYU.
Yeah. Who would have thought that preseason? Like, I know the Big 12 was pretty open, but BYU and Iowa State being your 2, one of them might get a first-round bye in the playoff right now. Pretty insane stuff. Also, 3 number 18 like teams tied. Like, that's how chaotic it was. I don't think I've ever seen that. Like, I've seen it at the bottom where it's like the 225.
2 number 25, yeah.
But I've never seen 3 teams tied for 18. Indiana too. I'm hitching my wagon to Indiana if Mizzou's completely fallen off the boat. I love that the Hoosiers are good at football. They're like, they've never been good, even though they've had half the Alabama staff, which
they were good in 2020.
That's true. COVID, which I'll segue. I'm just lumping into the chaos that was college football. My headline: Vanderbilt upsets Alabama for first ever win against an AP number 1 team. Yeah, this was insane. Alabama gets the best win of the season in college football and then proceeds to walk into Nashville and get Diego Pavia. Kenny, please take your victory lap along with me. We called this Diego Pavia truthers out here. They didn't even get lucky in any capacity. They absolutely obliterated Alabama. Their defense looked terrible. Pavia and Vandy motioned them or optioned them to death. It was kind of beautiful to watch. And then the students took down the goalpost, walked them 3 miles down Broadway in Nashville and threw them in the Cumberland River. I mean, that is some dedication. I hope those kids didn't sleep. That's the greatest win in their school's history. If you're a student, you better have just partied the whole night. It was pretty fun. I full disclosure, I was at this game. I walked back to my car. It was parked right across the street from a frat house. The party was going strong. Wow. Did you guys watch this game? This is crazy. I mean, I would never expected this. I think Vandy was 22 or Alabama was 22.5 point favorites coming in. Insane.
Yeah, I saw the end. Really did not believe it would happen until that last touchdown that put Vanderbilt back up 2 touchdowns with just like 5 minutes to play. That's when I was like, oh my God, this might really happen. I mean, good for Vanderbilt. I mean, it's clear they're not the same Vanderbilt of years past. Clark Lee, I think Kenny and I in particular have always been like, he's a pretty good coach. He's just in a impossible situation at his alma mater. And I think really a lot of people wrote them off when AJ Swan and all 3 of their top receivers dipped out this year. I mean, and I think with NIL and everything and the portal, Lee even alluded to it in his post-game press conference. He's like, we've always been a year behind, but this is the one we've kind of got it all together. He brought in Pavia and not to be overlooked, Jerry Kill and Tim Beck, the OC head coach duo from New Mexico State last year, are also at Vanderbilt. So they've done a really great job there. Really cool for Vanderbilt. I'm not sure in my lifetime, like where, like in terms of just biggest upsets I've seen in my lifetime, how far up this is. I think it's probably top 5 or so, though. I mean, you got to really. I know there's a little more context here. Like this is a better Vanderbilt team, and this is the first time where it's really I'm not trying to talk down on Kalen DeBoer. Like Kalen DeBoer is a phenomenal head coach. This is the first time you really kind of notice with Alabama, okay, Nick Saban ain't here no more. Like, because this is a game Nick Saban would not have lost. And that's not an indictment of DeBoer. It's just a more of a, like, that's how good Saban was. Like, he would have figured it out here. But just the context of seeing Vanderbilt beat Alabama, like that statement is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the crazy part.
Diego Pavia won the Iron Bowl. He has defeated Auburn, and he has defeated Alabama at 2 different colleges. So good for
He's
him.
got to be the first ever to beat Auburn or like beat one of them as a out of conference quarterback and then come into the conference and beat the other one. That's got to be the first time that's ever happened. I mean,
yeah, it's definitely not like a long list of players, if so, because the
No.
transfer portal is fairly different than it was 10 years ago.
Vanderbilt had 23 points at halftime of this game. That is the most that tied the amount of points they scored in the last 5 games against Alabama combined. And that was at halftime. They finished with 40. They beat Alabama last in 1984. So, yeah, this was an insane game. And yet still Ryan Williams made a absolute monster catch, and this guy should be playing in the NFL already, and he's 17. Unbelievable. Yep. Yeah, this was fun.
Checking his watch on Ryan Williams.
What you got?
Yak will always find some way to talk about Ryan.
I love, dude. The kid, he's so good. He's so good. It's just I think you just have to realize what you're watching. The kid should be in the NFL already. Yeah, I took a photo next to the torn down goalpost. It was very funny. It's just Art But Make It Sports had a good comparison. I don't know how that account does that, but they had like a photo of the goalpost and some sculpture that just looked exactly like it.
AI.
Yeah,
I think they put it into a system at this.
It might have, like, if it is, that'd be sad because the fines they get are crazy. I read a good feature about the owner of that account on a random note, but yeah, college football is insanity. Thank you, Alabama, for taking the headlines away from Mizzou for some hours after that game. That was nice to see. We'll see what happens in week 6. All right, ratio of the week. Kenny, you want
this ratio is submitted by our friend Joseph Boudet, true son, Mizzou alum. Worked, or I think they've been on the show before, if I'm not mistaken. It feels like everyone's been on the show. But Jeff Passan posted a Shohei Ohtani home run to his X account and said the Bat Chuck Friar Breaks, which is a Padres account, said, Jeff, where's Manny's homer? Jeff Passan replied, if you want to stop being treated like a little brother, stop acting like one. And Radio Friar, another Padres account, quoted it with, if you want to stop being treated like a little brother, stop acting like one, with a photo of Jeff Passan on a little step stool. This photo's gone around. It's not new. But I think it was from the winter meetings a couple of years ago, if not this past season, and it got 26,000 likes. It might be even more by the time this episode comes out. But Jeff Passan got 6.8 thousand likes. So congrats to Radio Fryer for ratio of the week.
Great counter own. I thought the Passan tweet was going to be the ratio, but that's even better.
Yeah.
It was a ratio.
How do you guys feel about
the main ratio?
Yeah. How the rumors of it was going to be Passan and now it might be Adam Schefter who takes Woj's job, and Adam Schefter's just the king of news, monopolizing.
They should really just hire an NBA reporter to do the NBA breaking news.
Oh, Payton. ESPN doesn't spend money like that. Don't be silly.
Well, they should. But
yeah, Jeff Passan short. He didn't seem short, but it looks like he is.
No, he is. Yeah.
Also, why I don't actually understand this photo. It doesn't look like the podium's not. It's just to look taller.
Yeah.
The thing he's standing in front of is short.
Well, there's probably a camera off camera.
So the thing that he's standing in front of is where he puts his phone and other.
Oh
information he's
yeah.
off
Okay. So
while
they
he's on
can't see
TV.
it. Yeah. Okay, I see it now. That makes sense. Because I was gonna say even on camera they can make you look taller. Just it's all about angles. But yeah, if you need your table, that makes sense. All right. Good ratio. Payton, do you also have a joke, or should we?
I sure do, guys. This one comes from our favorite TV series, The Today Show. Guys, why did the orchestra get struck by lightning?
I've heard this one. Something about a violin.
Nope. Any guess, Kenny?
No.
Because it had a conductor.
There you go.
It's a good one.
Science jokes. Hopefully Mizzou can engineer the science to rebuild its season. No, it can't. All right. We're hopeless. Everything is sad. Basketball starts in less than a month. So there you go. Look forward to that. We'll start previewing as well. We'll have a preview for UMass. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about other than just kind of more doubling down on what the hell
More
happened
A&M
Saturday.
game.
Yeah, this is probably another recap, but we'll have that for you nonetheless. Have more quick hits, more college football talk, all that fun stuff. Please lament in the comments. Use it as your therapy sessions, and we will see you guys on Friday.